If you're determined to age well, then you, my friend, are in the right place, because that's why we're here, to age well. Bloody well, in fact. Welcome to the Aging Project podcast. I'm Shelley Craft, your host and fellow ager. And in each episode, we'll dive into the nitty-gritty of what it takes to age well, learning from experts around the world and, of course, from each other. Why? Because aging well doesn't just happen, my friends, and each of us needs and deserves a support team. So you can think of us as your tribe or perhaps your cheerleaders. We're here to stand by your side, to propel you forward and spark yes you can choices at every age. We'd love for you to join our growing community. In fact, we're calling it a movement. And of course, try our free 5-day morning challenge over at theagingproject.com. It is a great place to start your aging journey, and this is a great place to kick off today's episode. Brought to you by youmusttryit.com, where you'll find supplements, skincare, and makeup. We've tried it, we've tested it, and we love it, and it's all in one place.
If you lined up 10 chiropractors, unfortunately, you might get 10 different answers in regards to what chiropractic is, which is a shame, but it's life also, different colleges and influences. But to me, it's always about restoring function. Okay, so it started way back with very limited knowledge in regards to having my spinal problems. I would go to a chiropractor, I would receive relief, which would last for a certain period of time, not long. But that now I realise is like going somewhere and, let's say, to a dentist, getting your teeth cleaned, and then not knowing how to clean your teeth. So of course they're going to get dirty again. But and that lacks in a lot of professions, spinal professions especially, empowering the person on how they can look after themselves.
If you were to look into a crystal ball and ask yourself, what's the one condition that could impact me for the second chapter of my life? I bet you know what it is. Yes, I've got 2 words for you. It is back pain. Like most parts of our body, like our livers, our brains, our gut, the health of our back matters so much for our longevity. And yes, we have a tendency to take it for granted until it's not working. Our guest today is Jason Gilbert. For the last 30 years, he's dedicated his life to help tens of thousands of people all around the world overcome their spinal problems and their back pain. Jason, I've heard you say a healthy person has 1,000 dreams and a person who has lost their health has only one. And I imagine for the people, for you, see that one dream is to have their back health back.
Exactly, Shelley. I've seen that countless times, and it's exactly that. When they're in that situation where they're limited and in pain, all they want is to be able to do all of the things that they're limited from doing and once did, and one day will want to do again.
It makes so much sense when you think about it. Look, my back is the centre of my universe, really. It's holding my, the bum off the ground, and it's holding my head on my shoulders. Can you give us a 101 of how the spine actually works and the process of what goes wrong when we do get back pain?
Sure, yeah. So let's start with the brain. The brain's the master organ of the body, and it's that important that it's encased by an immobile cranium, the skull, doesn't move, and it's really thick, so it protects it really well. The brain uses the nervous system and all the nerves from the spinal cord out to transmit messages to every cell, organ, and tissue in the body. The problem is those tissues are as delicate as the brain, but they're encased within a mobile spine. So think about that. It's like having the electrical component of a car inside the wheel. Obviously, the bumps and holes of a road, the poor postures, falls, and other things in our lives that end up causing misalignments in the spine. So that in itself doesn't cause a problem usually when it happens, unless it's a strong accident or something like that. It's an accumulative thing with time and dysfunction that eventually brings symptoms to our attention. And unfortunately, like most pathological processes, when the symptom arrives, the process has been occurring for weeks, months, years, and often decades.
So that's it. A lot of back pain that we have in our 40s and beyond could be due to things that we were doing in our teens and our 20s that we didn't even realise were going to have an impact until that one day. And you think, all I did was sneeze, and suddenly I'm in great amounts of pain.
Yeah, that's exactly how it happens, Shelley, because I see that on x-rays hundreds, thousands of times in my career where people said nothing's happened and they're adamant. And then we look at their x-rays and we see severe degeneration in a certain segment, and they'll either remember something in childhood, or often they won't, but maybe their mum over the years has been there going, yeah, I remember you as a baby, you fell on your head, or you fell really hard, you cried, you stopped crying. It's like that, the wheel of the car. If it's misaligned and you leave it long enough, it's going to wear out the tyre. So by the time most people feel pain, as you said, it's a sneeze or something relatively unimportant, the straw that breaks the camel's back. And understandably, that's what gets the attention.
So I guess too, it's not just nerve, is it? You've got nerves. You've obviously got bone in there. The muscles all joined together. How do you really know what's causing the problem? I mean, your own story. You've seen, as you say, hundreds of thousands of backs over the time, but your own story must have really hit home to, wow, where do I even start with this problem?
Yeah, that's a really good question, because often people will understandably want to know what tissue, what's actually happening. But over the years, just from seeing all of these people from all levels of life, whether they be poorer people in Peru up in the Andes or the Amazon, or the elite sports people I work with, or your tradies and people who like dentists who have postures every day that they sustain, it's the dysfunction caused by those events that affects every tissue. Because once we deviate from normal alignment, okay, we have obviously muscle lengths that change, tendons, cartilages that have more pressure on them, sides of discs, the intervertebral discs that have more pressure and start to dehydrate. So I think we've got to be very careful in avoiding breaking it down to one tissue, which can often happen if it's a muscle strain. When we're playing sport, we can identify it. If it's not, when we do get really reductionist, we can actually just focus on that particular tissue, as opposed to going, well, hang on, what's the underlying cause? Let's fix that up. Let's remove the blockage and let the body do its job, and all of those tissues will benefit.
Do you find that people that come into you, they say, oh, mate, it's my left side, it's my right hip. And then when you start to unpack the story, you're like, oh, no, this is actually happening up in the top right side of your skull here.
Yes, definitely. The body compensates in funny ways. And it's like all, I guess, health situations where it's not one size fits all. So over the years, you can imagine how many thousands of times I've heard that. We have to go through every case like it's a new case, because it is. We all have distinct lives and influences. And once we consider also the importance of other factors like the chemical factors from our diet, either an insufficiency of nutrients or an excess of toxins, plus the toxins that can occur in our mind with stress, psychological problems, poor sleep, then we can really see that each situation is so distinct. And we need to take the time to talk, identify what's going on, remove what we can, introduce what we can, let the body do its job, and then you often come into the next stage and go, all right, cool, you're out of pain, you're still limited. So it's a process. But when we live in a world that is accustomed to ignoring a problem until it becomes symptomatic, and then having an intervention that's focused on suppressing the symptom, which is actually a healthy reflex. So that often brings fast results, but it doesn't actually look at the underlying cause. So this is a new way, a new paradigm for people to think about actually getting to the underlying cause, and also be that person that wants to have 1,000 dreams and not just one, so that on the other side of it, they come out stronger. They've learned something that they actually apply to their whole health, not just their spinal health.
Sounds like a very good management plan. Let's start with your story, Jason. Why the back? Because I know you've got 1,000 skills. What made you hone in on the spine and the back particularly?
Yes. So I had back pain from a very young age. And I think, this is just my opinion, but I feel that when kids have spinal problems that might occur when they're young, either through sporting impacts or falls or whatever it is, that they might think that that's normal, because it's a constant reflex. And in my case, I associated that with sport. Every time I ran or played football or surfed, I had pain after it. When I didn't have pain. So that was something that wasn't bad enough to stop me in my tracks. And I therefore didn't tell mum and dad about it. But when I was around 18, it actually did stop me in my tracks. And luckily, I was led to chiropractic. And there's a series of events at that time that led me to chiropractic. And one was Tom Carroll, ex-world surfing champ, recommending I do chiropractic. The other ones, we owned a health food store in Manly, and I worked there as a kid and loved health. I was always around healthy, elderly people rocking it. That still fascinates me. in regards to their longevity tips. But one day, one of them saw me studying science, and they said, "What are you doing that for? Where's that going to take you? You should study chiropractic." So I don't believe anything's a coincidence, but in this one particular week, there's a lot of things pointing me towards chiropractic.
So we think of chiropractic as the cracking of bones, I guess. And again, there's lots of different modalities and ways to go about helping. What is chiropractic, and where does that start and stop? Because again, you've diversified so much from that.
Sure. And that's a great question also, because if you lined up 10 chiropractors, unfortunately, you might get 10 different answers in regards to what chiropractic is, which is a shame, but it's life also, different colleges and influences. But to me, it's always about restoring function. Okay, so it started way back with very limited knowledge in regards to having my spinal problems. I would go to a chiropractor, I would receive relief, which would last for a certain period of time, not long. But that now I realise is like going somewhere and, let's say, to a dentist, getting your teeth cleaned, and then not knowing how to clean your teeth. So, of course, they're going to get dirty again. But and that lacks in a lot of professions, spinal professions especially, empowering the person on how they can look after themselves. So that was the first stage for me. Then the second stage, I guess, was my own sport and working with sports people and realising that I needed more. So then with time, I adopted physio techniques, osteo techniques, electroacupuncture, always with the philosophy that I learned from chiropractic about restoring function. So I might use those other modalities to go back to that joint and make sure that's working the way it should. I guess also I spent 20 years in Latin America. And in that time, I was working between Peru and Brazil. And I feel very blessed because I would work in Sao Paulo, which is a city of 20 million people. It's a Latin New York. So you'd be getting a lot of corporates and speaking with those people about, what's happening at work and how they could fix that. But also in Peru, working with a lot of very poor people up in the Andes. I'd take my table and do social campaigns and charge a couple of dollars and sometimes see up to 200 people a day. So 20 hours work non-stop. But you can in that time how I had an amazing opportunity to join the dots. And our clinic in Lima, we had an X-ray machine. So we took X-rays of spines and correlated all the results with what I was finding on their X-rays. And then you can really break it down and find that, that segment has lost function. When I say segment, I'm not sure how this is going to come out, but that is a spinal segment. Okay, you can see two vertebrae and a disc in the middle. So when I was talking before, how's the quality there? Does that look okay?
Looks good to me, but if we're just listening, going to be tricky. But everyone imagine their spines. We've got two spinal... We've got the discs, we've got the actual spinal cord running down the middle. But yes, I think anyone over 50 kind of knows what a spine looks like by now. But I get it. But each vertebrae has its own purpose too, right?
So if we compare that to the wheel of a car or the wheels of a car, you can imagine when that segment loses alignment, it also loses function and therefore will accelerate that process of degeneration eventually. So why I'm saying that is that, of course, the chiropractic side is so important to get in there and decompress it, to get in there and restore function. But because it's a manual profession, and people need to remember that we have a master's degree. It's a 5-year course. It's not a massage course, and I don't want to take away from massage. It's incredible. I use it every week. However, it is a serious course where someone does know how to read X-rays, take X-rays. We study neurology and orthopedics as well. So I guess after all those years away, coming back to Australia and often running into people that were fearful of that adjustment, it was a shame to see them, I guess, accept the fact that if they're subsymptomatic, meaning that anything could make them symptomatic again, simply by the fact that they're not looking at those segments, we're identifying on X-rays that need function restored. Well, you know where that's going to end up. In years in the future, that will degenerate just like the tyre on that misaligned wheel will wear out.
Over at You Must Try It, we've discovered so many fabulous low-tox skin and makeup options. Many of our guests have spoken about reducing our overall toxic load, so that has become a huge priority for me. I've slowly moved to low-tox products, and You Must Try It have made it really easy. We only stock low-tox products we've tried, tested and love at youmusttryit.com. So we have done the research for you. If you haven't visited us already, please stop by at youmusttryit.com for 10% off your first order. the common causes of back pain, I imagine, in athletes is a little bit different to the average Joes. What do we get with our back pain? Is it the way we sit, the way we walk, the shoes that we wear?
Yeah, that's it. I'll leave that list to you. You're doing really well. How's that? But all
Phones, sitting, standing, lying.
exactly it. So let's say the way we walk, a lot of us actually have a difference in leg length. It can be anatomical. It can be from past sprains of ankles and fractures. So once again, if you've got more weight on one side than the other, well, that will obviously overload that side over time. And one of the first things I do in my first consultation is I've got two scales and I put one foot on the edge of one on the other, and then get the person to look ahead and read the difference. So what's the problem? Is it the pain or is that the problem? You know what I mean? Like, what would we consider success? Getting the person asymptomatic or actually getting a zero difference between the scales? You know, so anyone can do that at home. Any mums or dads listening can get that, get the kids there and examine each other so they've got a fair idea, because it's a shame to see problems in childhood that you know that people are only going to worry about 10 years, 20, 30 in the future when it becomes degenerated and symptomatic. But so that's one. I guess if we're talking women's themes, we're looking at heavy handbags, we're looking at high heels, we're looking at being pregnant and breastfeeding and how that can alter the center of gravity so the head goes forward and the strain occurs on the spine. We're looking at a lot of men that might have their wallet in their back pockets, laptops, looking down. The big one for me these days is anything that's when we're using technology and looking down at it.
Oh, you do. You want to walk around town and just poke people in the back, don't you? So they sit up that little bit straighter, and I'm doing it right now as I sit here. I'm going, oh, I know I'm slouching and I'm looking down. It must drive you crazy just being out in public.
Once again, if our only parameter is pain, well, no one's going to do anything about it until they're in pain. And if their intervention is to suppress pain, then they might not ever get to the cause of it. But I'd like to actually talk about that again. It's so important that let's imagine that neck when it goes forward. Okay, within the first couple of segments at the top of the neck under the brain is the brainstem. And that brainstem was actually designed to have the curve of our neck the way it should be, with the curve going backwards. So when the head goes forward and we lose that curve, we're actually getting that brainstem stretched. Can you imagine how devastating that is for our health to have a part of our anatomy, our nervous system, stretched continually? Of course, it's very detrimental. It can affect almost every function in the body. What's the best way to stop someone hurting themselves by doing that? Pain, headaches, and waking up with a stiff neck, dizziness. And what you'll notice, not always, but you'll often notice a less severe symptom like, rigidity and muscle tension, then pain, then headaches, and then maybe even dizziness, which I see quite a bit, especially with people who are looking down. You imagine knitting or sewing or, a dentist who's looking down all day. It can actually be devastating for our health in general. It's stressful. It puts our body into a state of stress.
So basically, being alive in this day and age is going to cause us or cause our back some deal of strain, no matter what it is we're doing, no matter how we're doing it. So it's really important, as you're saying, Jace, to be completely conscious of that at all times. And that's obviously going to help us a little bit if we start standing up straighter and if we start being more conscious of the way our back sits all the time, whether we're 40, 50, 60 or 70, we have an opportunity to relieve a lot of those pressures. But some of them obviously already done, muscles are already pulling in one direction or a hip's pushing in another direction. The physical side of it's one thing. The chemical causes of back pain are quite wide and varied as well, and something that we probably wouldn't think about so much.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really good point. And that came to my attention for a few reasons. Living in Sao Paulo, once again, busy city, people love working and they study. A lot of them study actually after work. So they're sitting down probably 12, 14, 16 hours a day, maybe combining transport in there as well. So you see that movement isn't a priority. Diet is often compromised, okay? And the stress is high. So it was the first time really in my career that when I got there and I was working on people and I just wasn't getting the normal results that I get in other places. And when I dive deeper and I'd ask, hey, do you drink water? Like, what's your hydration looking like? They'd say, well, no, I hate water. This is not all the time, but for example, I don't like water. I just drink a certain really common fizzy drink. You're like, oh, okay, you don't like water. No, I don't like the taste. All right, fair enough. So over the years, hearing hundreds and hundreds of times things like that, you start to join the dots and say, well, hang on, a muscle's 80% water, more or less, 70 to 80. So if it's not getting enough water, it's not going to function the way it should. Okay. Or if we're getting too much sugar, alcohol's a muscle relaxant. So when we realize the detrimental effects of certain substances that we're exposing ourselves to, we actually can see how it's a very valid factor coming from a chemical cause, stuff we ingest. And that means too much of what we can't have, which are toxic, or not enough of what we need. Very easy, that one. So I could do this usually in an hour workshop, which I do, or a whole weekend retreat that I also do. We sit down and we identify nutrients, we identify causes, and we get people to put them in 3 groups: physical, chemical, emotional, so that everyone leaves with their little blueprint of what they need to focus on. And you know, the fascinating thing, Shelley, is that when you do this, in a month's time, your pain's better, you're sleeping better, you're happier, you're more mobile, just by identifying what you need to introduce and what you need to remove.
And isn't it crazy? Again, you're looking after your back, but all of those things are going to contribute to your overall well-being and health. But if you need to focus on that one thing, and as you say, people don't often make changes until there's a problem. So if back pain is your problem, by, again, cutting out the alcohol, drinking more water, cutting down on your sugar, is not only going to help your back, but it's going to help everything about you.
That's exactly right. So this is a chat predominantly about back pain. However, back pain is a symptom of ill health, of dysfunction. So if we bring it back, and this is really interesting also to realise that most of us, I guess, have a definition around health that's based on how we feel or how we look. Okay, that person looks healthy. That person ran every day. They are healthy. Or if I ask people at a retreat, for example, what's health for you? Oh, it's when I'm feeling good, when I have energy. So they're things based on how we feel. However, there's plenty of people that wake up this morning feeling great. They might have a serious diagnosis later on of cancer or some disease, or even have a heart attack and pass away. And that's the first symptom they'll ever get. So they're in dysfunction a long time before their body actually steps in and goes, hey, no more. Okay, so if we direct people towards the true definition of health, once again, apply it to the spine or any other organ of our body, health is 100% function. Okay, whether it be a cell, an organ, or the spine. And so if we also understand, and there's a word for that, it's actually called homeostasis. We don't often hear that word, but that's what it is. So true function can only occur once again when we're receiving what we're genetically programmed to receive as far as nutrients, and we are avoiding or keeping to a minimum the toxins that we can't be exposed to. And a lot of people these days, Shelley, will say, well, hang on, I can't avoid, let's say breathing in diesel fumes when I'm at the service station, or I can't avoid Wi-Fi, and I can't avoid, I like to go out to dinner and they use vegetable oils. Fair enough. Okay, so this is everyone's understanding about making conscious decisions. That's all I want. I want to have people empowered so that they're making a decision based on the fact that, hey, we're on a road trip and what we're eating on the side of the road isn't ideal, but it's a conscious decision, as opposed to a family that might go to a certain food chain and go, hang on, we're going to buy here because it's cheap and economical and it feeds everyone. In reality, it feeds no one. It's just satisfying their hunger.
And not even that, because it's empty calories and it's not going to keep you full for long. But that's another podcast altogether, isn't it?
That was probably the extreme of a conscious decision. So as far as conscious decisions go, if people are recognising, hey, this is actually impeding or interfering with my normal function, then you're giving them the power to change that. They're going to be able to, I guess, get out of the chair more often. They're going to start to sleep in the right position. They're going to start to join the dots in the morning when they wake up stiff and say, well, hang on, my mattress needs to be changed. Or they're seeing that one time that they're in a nice habit of doing exercise regularly and then they had an injury or a sickness and they stopped it. Oh, hang on, I've got power of that. I can go walking again and introduce movement back in there and hydrate and all the rest. So It's more within our control than what most of us imagine, and too many of us put our health in other professionals' hands. And this might seem polemic, but it's actually not. What I'm about to say is that unfortunately, in the label health profession, the greater majority, I'd say much more than 90% of health professionals are actually disease professionals using different modalities, meaning that they're well-meaning, they're responsible, but what they're taught is to diagnose and treat. So if we're diagnosing something, we've already lost our health. By the time most people think about their health, they've lost it, whether it be their spinal health or anything else, and a successful intervention will be a suppression of symptoms, as opposed to finding a health professional that actually gets function and will help guide you towards what you need to do to get back to 100% normal function, or obviously 100% is what we strive for, but as close as possible to it.
Well, we are all about that here. We're about owning our own health and, of course, being proactive about that in a really holistic view. Let's take it all in, and that's what we're doing here with you today. If we were feeling pretty good and our back's not giving us that many problems, but we do want to be proactive about it, it seems, I guess it would be a bit strange to just book an appointment with an osteo and say, hey, I feel great, but I want you to look at my back. Are there any things that we can be doing? Are there tests that we can do? Is there any blood test that tells us sort of how our back is feeling, or scans that we can do to be proactive about our back health and I guess give us that baseline for how we go about getting even better and stronger in the spine?
For sure. Great question. So firstly, we don't wait till we break down to take our car to get it serviced. So treat your osteo, chiro, physio like that, please. Do it asymptomatic. Do it as a checkup. Okay. And you'll obviously get a lot more mileage from your car, or from your body, I should say. Number two, I really like the idea of x-rays because they give a lot of information. A lot of people say, but the radiation. God, these days, the amount of radiation we're around, the x-rays once upon a time had a significant amount. Comparatively, they don't now. And the information you get from a standing set of x-rays is enormous. You see how your body's reacting to the effects of gravity. You see if your hips and the femoral heads, okay, the top of your legs are even. You see, for example, if the head's forward, you'll see if there's less disc space, because you won't see that. You'll see it in MRI, but you won't be able to compare the whole spine because we can't stand up to do an MRI. We're in a tube lying down. So this is why I like the idea of standing x-rays, to give you the information necessary to recognise what areas of your spine are taking more load than others. Just like that, I keep talking about the wheel of the car. It's exactly like that. Going and saying, oh, this is great. We're identifying an area that's not worn out yet, but it is very compromised in its alignment. Okay, I'm going to take these measures to be able to avoid degeneration in the future. So then, working with that professional, if you go there asymptomatic, great. You're going to go there monthly, let's say, whatever your 10,000 kilometre service in a car would be for your spine. And not in the meantime, the rest of the time, because you have the majority responsibility, you'll be looking at posture, you'll be looking at supporting your spine really well, those times that it's not moving. For example, good chairs, lumbar supports, good beds, good pillows, anything that you can do to assist that and maintain the normal curves of the spine, and you'll be moving well. So moving well, let's say we love a sport. Tennis, golf, surfing, almost every sport has its negative. Okay, we're not going to avoid doing that sport because of that. We're just going to recognize what part of our bodies work more than what they should, and go to that chosen professional asymptomatically to focus on compensating for the dysfunction that's occurring without causing symptoms. Then we've got our self-care with yoga, Pilates, any one of a number of other amazing maintenance type exercises. I do a combo. I like a stretching day, then I like my strength day. We've got other things like saunas and ice baths to deal with inflammation and maintenance. I guess that's the trick. I want to motivate most people to thinking in regards to their health and their spine health the same way they think about brushing their teeth every day. I'm sure if we had to spend an hour brushing our teeth, we probably wouldn't brush our teeth every day. It's done, it's easy, and we're taught very young how to do it. But we really need to think like this, Shelley. We're investing in our future. The number one cause of bankruptcy, believe it or not, is paying for medical bills.
Don't.
Yeah, and Harvard did a study, it must be about 7 years ago now, that showed that any investment in health will give you a 2,000% return on your money. Who's not going to invest in something that's going to give you 2,000%?
Mm-hmm.
Think of that like that today. And I see it. I feel blessed that I work with all demographics. And when I see elderly people rocking it, you know, my Instagram, actually, this is my interest lately. When I run into someone, I put it there and I record them. But recently I was speaking with a lady who was 81 in Brazil. She is an anaesthetist, so she's still working at the hospital. She'd done a double shift and then played tennis after it at 81. What you're seeing is that when you ask them what their tricks are, their secrets, it's not rocket science, it's having purpose. She actually said small meals were a really important part of hers, movement, okay? The basics. Stick to that. We invest in ourselves today, and it doesn't have to be a huge monetary investment, but it is an investment in time. There's no better investment. You're happy, your relationships function better, you deal with anyone in any situation better. Obviously your pain's lower, you run less risk of relying on pain medication to deal with avoidable pain in the future. Anyway, I could talk all day about it, but that's the crux of it.
A quick pause to invite you to become part of our growing community. To gain access to all our podcast episodes, a weekly newsletter, and our new free 5-day morning challenge that will kickstart your aging well journey alongside us, go to theagingproject.com.au. It's that easy. We'd love you to join us. Let's come together, connect, share stories, and reimagine what aging well looks like. Now, back to today's show. Jason, if we're thinking of things, and again, our main audience are women sort of halfway, but we don't think that because we're going to live to 120. The things that are going to affect us are, of course, the fact we've worn heels all our lives, perhaps the pregnancies and the breastfeeding, etc. But as we get older, we start to notice our bodies changing. And one of those things that women seem to get more than men, I believe, is that sort of fatty hump, I guess, up the top of our back, that's sort of towards our neck. And it does make our whole body roll forward. What is that? And is there anything we can do to avoid it now?
Yeah, really great question, especially when we're talking about technology in these modern times. So that's actually called a Dowager's hump, okay, when it gets to that point where it's visible and where there's the fatty deposit. Now, it's very easy to understand how we get it and how we can avoid it. First, recognize we're not born like that. So it's acquired over time. And that's basically because we have something called the center of gravity line. That is a line that passes through our ear, shoulder, hip, knee, and ankle. When all of those articulations, those joints are aligned, okay, there's a minimum of load on our spine due to gravity. Now, if we look at our head, for every 1 centimetre that the ear goes forward of the shoulder, it overloads that area of our neck that we're talking about, the base of the neck, by 5 kilograms, which is the weight of the head. Every 1 centimetre, 5 kilograms, more or less. Let's imagine how many people, when they look at a phone, they're 3, 4, maybe 5 centimetres in front. So that's 15, 20 or 25 kilos of. So that's how we lose the curve there. If that's one off, or if it's, let's say, a requirement of our profession and we're compensating for it, okay, this is not set in stone. You won't necessarily end up with that Dowager's hump. However, that's not the case for most of us. With time, okay, and the effects of gravity, our ability to resist gravity becomes more difficult. Plus, those segments become restricted. Hence the need for someone like a chiropractor who can get in there to those joints and restore function, combined with advice and exercises to compensate for that forward head. Okay. Now, why does the fatty pad appear? Generally in our bodies, in a lot of areas, when the load is excessive, one of the ways our bodies deal with that is by depositing fat in that area. So you'll often feel that it's not the same sort of tissue as the skin and muscle in other areas. There's actually fat in there as well. Okay, so look, over the years, if someone had come in early in my career and said, hey, can you help me? I would have said no. But with time, just as a part of the treatment for another problem, people have actually come in and said, that lump I had, or you didn't know, but I had it, it's improving. So don't underestimate the body's ability, once you give it a good posture and take the load off that area, that it will become apparently better. When I say apparently, the shape will be better, but who knows with time if the fat's absorbed or not.
My goodness. I'm going to walk around as tall as a 7-foot male today. I'm just everything about the way I'm sitting going, not good, not right. And now I know it.
Yeah, and one probably main reason there to walk like a 7-foot person is just to keep the brainstem the way it should be. You know, when you look at the neck on an MRI, you'll actually see the brainstem's encased in the first two segments. That can't be stretched excessively for prolonged periods of time.
God, so were we built right? In your opinion, when you look at the human skeletal system, a lot of people say, oh, we were never supposed to stand up straight. You know, we're never supposed to live past 40 because everything starts to degenerate. Do you think either of those things? Are we built properly if we maintain it? Did he get it right? Are we like the perfect specimen?
I think our body's built perfectly. I think even if we look at the spine and the nerve roots exiting from it, it's incredible. It's just that there's question marks around its ability, for example, to resist degeneration if problems are there and unresolved. So maybe back in the day, without access to medicine like we have these days and other things, I actually think quite often, wow, what would I have done with a wisdom tooth problem or, a disc hernia? I've had spinal surgery. So, wow, thank God for modern medicine. But I think it's perfect. The only modification I'd make on the spine would be a situation like a garden hose that's quite mobile and rigid with some holes there so those holes can't be reduced due to spinal problems.
Can you give us a case study of, say, a patient that you've seen over the years that had either a great recovery or just couldn't believe how much they'd suffered through before they came to see you?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so that lady, the one who was 81, that's the most recent one. And the beautiful thing is that she's a doctor and she's worked in medicine her whole life. So she's thinking more allopathically, understandably. You know, she's come in to actually get out of pain. So it was beautiful to be able to show her, hey, this is what's happened. Tennis overloads your sacroiliac joint. That was blocked. You know, we've released it a few times. And so she's actually gone, oh, thank you so much. You're like, you know what? It's actually your body that's healing itself. We're just removing the blockages. So that's a case that's repeated multiple times over the years. But even if we went to the other end of the spectrum, recently I had a lady with twins come in and she just couldn't figure out why one of the twins was crawling really well and the other twin would actually sit on the floor and drag herself along the floor. So thought about it and I've said, what about breastfeeding? Like often when babies have neck problems, they'll favour one breast over the other, and that was the case. So then we've just gone in lightly around the neck and palpated, and there was definite neck problems that we identified that second twin had more of a difficult, I guess, delivery than the first twin. So whatever the cause was, it couldn't lift its head up because it hurt to do so. That's why it didn't crawl. And then it was a really easy fix. You know, we've removed the blockage. There's a special instrument that we use to do that. It's low impact. So that's beautiful. And it's just as gratifying as working with that elderly person who's had a small blockage. So I think in the start of a lot of health professionals' careers, it's our ego and we take a lot of the credit for it. No, we can't take any credit. The credit is actually due to the body and our ability to remove the blockage. And that could be any health problem, functional medicine with dietary issues, any other health professional as well, is getting success when they're allowing the body to function because it doesn't have any blockages in doing so.
God, we really do have to consider anything that we could be feeling, as you're saying now, could be right back from our birth, and we've carried that through and probably compensated a little bit for it our whole lives. And now when we're thinking about looking after our 10-year-older self or our 20-year-older self, what we'd like to be capable of doing in our 80s and 90s and well beyond, there's no better time to start than today. What can we be doing? You mentioned before mattresses and pillows. Should we be sleeping on the floor? Have we created these lovely sort of clouds in our bedrooms that aren't doing us any favours? Do you have any advice on the best way to sleep?
Yeah, just rattling off the top of my head that firstly I'd say never ignore any pain. So if you are waking up stiff or in pain, especially if it's low back, look at your mattress. Okay, there's too many people that accept a soft mattress as normal or an old one, or even a lot of people that have gone and bought a new one that are quite stubborn, because you can actually buy a new one that was expensive and still be inadequate for your spine. So start there. Look at the way you sleep. It's very important. Okay, obviously we've got to sleep in a position that's comfortable, but we do need to understand if we sleep face down, we have to turn our head to the left or the right to be able to breathe. And over time, we get chronic shortening of those muscles. You ask almost anyone who sleeps on their belly, they'll have a favourite side to turn their head to when they sleep. Plus the fact that there's an accentuation of the lumbar curve when they're on their belly. It's a bit like lying on the floor all day face down, like you feel it. It's just that when we're sleeping, we're unconscious. We're not getting those signals, those pain signals as clearly as what we would during the daytime.
So you're not going to lie face down for 8 hours, are you? You're really not.
So that's really important. Sleep quality is really important. Your sleep habits, what you do before going to sleep. You can inflame your body just before you go to sleep by eating any number of foods or drinking alcohol, having a lot of sugar. So that's a time for repair, and obviously your body's putting more effort into fighting inflammation than repair. Obviously, if you've got any weak links in the spine, that will be exacerbated by that increase in inflammation. So sleep habits are really important. Also stimulating our mind. We see that if we've got, on a conscious or a subconscious level, if we're stimulated, we're moving a lot, we're restless. That's one thing that's really important, Sheila. If we understand cortisol, our stress hormone, and we understand that these days cortisol stress levels are high. Back in the day, it would have been a spike to survive an attack or run from a potential tribe or predator. And in those moments, there would have been a whole series of functions that were down-regulated. No one's going to want to sleep when they're fighting for their lives. You won't need to digest. You won't need to reproduce. Okay, so sex hormones are down-regulated. Okay, up-regulators, heart rate, is blood pressure and cholesterol, believe it or not, because we might lose a limb. Very, very seldom will someone have high cholesterol levels, and their practitioners are going to ask, well, how are your stress levels? Is it, well, cholesterol goes high for that reason. But what's happening these days is that with that elevation of cortisol, people are having chronic sleep problems. Okay, melatonin is not, it's being suppressed. And if they do get to sleep, they'll often fall asleep fast, but they'll wake up 2 or 3 a.m. and be wide awake. It's a no-brainer for cortisol. But also, it's what was meant to be a hormone that's acutely secreted to fight inflammation actually becomes pro-inflammatory when it's sustained at a high level for a prolonged period of time. So if people can understand this, they can hack themselves as well and understand, okay, that's happening. High cortisol, for example, I use some herbs such as rhodiola and ashwagandha. They're really effective in putting a cap on cortisol. So people come in and say, I'm sleeping better, and that back pain that I couldn't get on top of, I feel like finally I've got an angle on it. So yeah, it's everyone's distinct, but starting with sleep, looking at hydration, really important. Too many of us are dehydrated. We don't realize it. And a lot of people wake up in the morning, don't hydrate, they jump straight into a coffee. So coffee dehydrates them straight off the bat. And secondly, if the coffee's too early, it jacks our cortisol levels. So we're put straight into a stressful state when we actually wake up with our cortisol levels high in the morning. So you can understand if someone is, like so many people scratching their head and thinking, why can't I get on top of this back pain or this headache or sciatic pain or whatever it is, then maybe they've got to look further afield for the cause of it.
Oh, God, Jason, so much to think about today and beyond. And it's all coming down to back pain. But as you say, this is a really holistic view of why your back might be hurting. There's so many elements that could go into it. And look, all of them, not an easy fix, but if you start ticking them off the list and start doing all of those little things, surely it's going to reduce quite quickly, and you will start to see those changes and that reduction of pain quite quickly if you're getting all of your ducks in a line this way.
And Shirley, actually, what you said that then makes a really good point, that I don't want to daunt anyone and disencourage anyone from even trying, because we've talked about it a lot and I'm passionate about what I do. So obviously that comes out. But let's first recognise that when people take their health back to a higher state, a lot of them associate that with what they have to give up. So let's imagine if someone's smoking, they're doing something that they clearly know is negative for their health. What I'd say, instead of being deterred totally from making changes, just start by introducing positive habits. Can you change the mattress? Can you go for a walk? Can you drink more water? Can you drink better quality water? Just start there. And I'm not saying this for everyone, but for those people who think, well, hang on, that's a lot. Where do I start? Start there. As they feel less and less pain and they feel more and more energy, most people naturally will look at the things that they know aren't that good for them and they'll naturally give them focus. So, yes, there's a list of things, but I really want to highlight the fact that it's not rocket science. And if we took it back to that list that everyone can do after this podcast of their toxins and nutrients and putting them into physical, chemical, and emotional lists, then they'll have a really good idea of what they need to focus on. Really good idea. And that really works.
You are really good at what you do. I know that we are all feeling now motivated and ready to make change. I've got one personal question to ask you, because as I was researching today, of course, up on my screen popped those magic little shoes, you know, the ones where your toes fit in and they've got the little copper button underneath to ground you and la la la. What's your opinion?
I haven't used them, so often I don't pass opinions on stuff that I haven't used. However, I like the idea of it. If copper can emulate the grounding effects of the earth, great. I am big on grounding. So every day, almost every day, I'm barefoot, unless I go to Sydney, see mum. And this morning, for example, I've already done an hour and a half walking bare feet, okay, along the coast there. So, and the reason for that is because we do get a negative charge from the earth called the zeta potential, and that allows our red blood cells to be separated. They need to be negatively charged to be able to exchange oxygen and CO2. So grounding is important. If we're working in offices and living in buildings and we don't have our feet in contact with the ground, things like that you're mentioning can be really good. And another really important one is a grounding sheet. You go online, you spend a couple of $100 for a sheet that actually plugs into the earthing part. You won't turn the plug on, but it'll actually plug into the wall. And you're going to be getting the earth's influence during the night when you sleep. It actually is true. Like when I bought my last one, it came with a meter. And you compare it before and after sitting on it or lying on it, you actually get the same frequency of the Earth's surface doing that way. Getting natural sunlight's really important as well. You know, anything that we can do, if we're not getting it, we'll get a red light panel. You know, they're not expensive these days. You can get cheaper ones. Just frequencies are important, and those that simulate the frequencies we would get in nature allows us to be modern animals living in cages a lot of the times to give our body what it would have got living back in the wild.
You are just a wealth of knowledge on all topics. I think I just go every week, we just need another little check-in with Jason. What's he got tips for us today? And if you are watching this, not just listening to this, he is a glistening, shining, beautiful man. What do you do to make yourself feel so good, Jace? Beside all of the things that you've mentioned, I know a lot of husbands and men do listen to this podcast as well, or women that can give their mates advice. What's aging mean to you?
Yeah, I'd say everything that we've talked about, that's what I do. And aging means, I guess for me, what I've learned with time, being present, more and more present, not worrying about things you've got no control over makes a massive difference. Not thinking too much in the future, because that's true, it does cause anxiety. Trying to avoid thinking about too much in the past, because you can't change it, that can lead to depression. And just giving your body what it needs. And honestly, I've been in a bad spot. I had severe mercury toxicity from removing my fillings incorrectly. And when you're in that crisis, to anyone who's listening, if you've been there and you get out of it, learn from it. Because like I think it's Mandarin where crisis also means opportunity. And there's a really good reason they're the same meaning, you know. So that's all it is. It's not rocket science. It's just regular sport, being around good people, good energy, giving your body what it needs.
Good living, mate. That's what it is. If, and I know you will, want to follow Jason, jump on his Instagram. It's Jason Gilbert Official. He has a YouTube channel, which is also at Jason Gilbert Official, and his website, jasongilbert.com.au. Every day there's a post there of inspiration, of motivation, and of course, lots of incredible knowledge and years and years and years of study. And Jason will certainly get you moving for the day. We can't thank you enough for being with us today. Thank you very, very much for your time.
Thank you very much. And your questions are incredible. And it's been an absolute pleasure and an honour actually to be invited on your podcast. You're doing amazing things. I'm seeing that as well. So congrats. I was going to one more thing too. I'm just releasing a course called the Strong Back Method course. It details everything we've just mentioned, plus so much more. It's very intensive, but it's that whole thing, guys. The last bit of advice from me is learn how to look after yourselves. Don't leave your health in the hands of other people. That's the way you'll age well.
Amen to that. Thanks, Jace.
Thank you so much. Congrats.
I absolutely love chatting with Jason. His wealth of knowledge and passion for helping us restore full function is truly inspiring. We invited Jason on the show because back pain is so common and it's a debilitating issue for so many. So let's not ignore the niggles and the signs that most of us probably already have. Let's start by giving our backs the support they need, beginning with the stand-up scan he mentioned to establish our baseline back health. Just like brushing our teeth, we must prioritise our spinal health. Today's conversation was a real wake-up call for me. Thank you so much, Jason. I'm sitting up straighter already, for inspiring us to take care of our back function, ensuring we maintain pain-free mobility and movement for as long as possible. Oh, and before we go, Jason did mention some great ingredients and supplements like ashwagandha. So if that interests you, please head over to youmusttryit.com. We have a stress page where you'll find products like a delicious adaptogenic hot chocolate full of special mushies. Perhaps you'd like to try the adrenal super tonic and maybe the calm sleep powder. That may take your fancy. Of course, they are all tried, tested and loved by us here at the Aging Project, and you must try it. Please share today's podcast with anyone you think that may benefit from Jason's knowledge, which I would say is pretty much everyone. Have a great day, and I'll speak to you all soon. I'm Shelley Craft. This is the Aging Project Podcast. A final thing before I go. If you enjoyed today's episode, can I ask two small things of you? Can I ask you to share it with someone you love? We would be so grateful for your support and help to spread the aging well message far and wide. We want everyone aging well alongside us. And if you wouldn't mind subscribing to the podcast, it helps more than you know and means you'll never miss an episode. Thank you so much. Until next time, I'm Shelley Craft, and this, my friends, has been another episode of The Aging Project. As always, the Aging Project podcast is for educational and entertainment purposes. Always seek medical advice from a qualified practitioner.